They blamed me for everything. How my family turned against me. Imagine getting blamed for your sister's overdose, your dad's bankruptcy, and even your mom's stress-induced shingles. All in the same year. I wish I was exaggerating. Growing up, I was the one who never caused trouble. The oldest of three, straight-A student. The kid who got a job at 16 to help with bills when dad's hours were cut. I became the unofficial family accountant by 18, helping my parents navigate their increasingly precarious finances. When my siblings needed rides, help with homework, or someone to cover for them when they broke curfew, I was there. I wasn't perfect, far from it, but I tried. I really tried. What I didn't realize was that being reliable made me an easy target. That's the thing about being the dependable one. People start to expect it. And when things fall apart, they look to you not for help, but for someone to blame. The first signs appeared when my sister Meg started changing in her senior year of high school. Her grades dropped. She withdrew from family events and started spending time with a crowd I didn't recognize. I noticed the red flags immediately, the sudden weight loss, the mood swings, the cash that kept disappearing from our mom's purse. I tried bringing it up with my parents over dinner one night. "Meg's going through something," I said carefully. "I think we should talk to her." Mom dismissed it with a wave. "She's just figuring herself out. You were moody at that age too." Dad barely looked up from his plate. "Leave her be. Not everyone's going to be perfect like you." I let it go. Maybe I should have pushed harder. Maybe I should have confronted Meg directly. Maybe I should have done 100 different things. But I didn't. And 6 months later, I got the call that she'd overdosed in her friend's basement. I was the first to reach the hospital. I sat there for 3 hours before my parents arrived, watching my sister's chest rise and fall with the help of machines. When they finally burst through the door, my mother's face was streaked with mascara. My father's eyes were bloodshot. They barely acknowledged me as they spoke with the doctors. It wasn't until we were alone in the waiting room that my father turned to me, his voice low and tight. "How could you let this happen?" The question hit me like a physical blow. "What? You knew she was hanging out with those people?" My mother joined in. "You're the oldest. You're supposed to look out for her." I sat there, stunned into silence. The conversation spiraled from there. How I should have known, should have done more, should have somehow prevented this. By the time Meg was stabilized and moved to a recovery ward, the narrative had been firmly established. I had failed my sister. That was just the beginning. As Meg began her long road to recovery, our family started to unravel in other ways. Dad's business partnership collapsed after years of mismanagement that he'd hidden from everyone. He'd been borrowing against our house, maxing out credit cards, and juggling payments for months. When it all came crashing down, he lost everything. The business, our family home, his dignity. I offered to help sort through the financial wreckage. I had a decent job by then, working as a project manager at a construction firm. I could cover some bills, help them find a smaller place to rent. But when I started asking questions about his finances, trying to understand the scope of the damage, his shame turned to anger. "You think you're so much smarter than everyone," he snapped one night. "If you'd helped me with the business instead of running off to build your own life, we wouldn't be in this mess." It was illogical, unfair, and yet, there it was. Somehow, his financial ruin had become my fault too. Mom's health declined next. The stress of Meg's recovery and Dad's bankruptcy manifested as shingles, a painful rash that left her bedridden for weeks. I took time off work to help care for her, bringing groceries, driving her to doctor's appointments, and managing her medications. But rather than gratitude, I received only criticism. "If you had helped your father more, I wouldn't be dealing with this now," she'd say, wincing as I changed her bandages. "All this stress is killing me." Each accusation stacked on top of the previous one, building a mountain of blame that I couldn't seem to escape. The narrative within our family had solidified. I was the one who had let everyone down, despite all evidence to the contrary. My younger brother, Alex, remained mostly on the sidelines of these conflicts. He had moved to Seattle for college and called occasionally, but he'd always been distant from family drama. That changed when he came home for Christmas that year. We were all sitting around a dinner table much smaller than our previous holiday gatherings. in the cramped apartment my parents now rented. Meg was 6 months sober and picking at her food. Dad was nursing his third whiskey. Mom was complaining about the neighbor's music being too loud. "So," Alex said, breaking an uncomfortable silence, "when are you going to help Mom and Dad get back on their feet?" I put down my fork. "I have been helping. I've been covering their rent for the past 3 months. "Yeah, but I mean really help," he pressed. "You know, move them in with you or something." My one-bedroom apartment was barely big enough for me, and the thought of bringing my parents' dysfunction into my last remaining safe space made my chest tighten. "That's not realistic. See," my father gestured toward Alex with his glass. "He gets it. Family takes care of family." "I am taking care of you," I said, my voice level despite the anger building inside me. "I'm just doing it in a way that's sustainable." "Sustainable," my mother repeated, making the words sound like an insult. Always with the fancy words and practical solutions. "What about heart? What about sacrifice?" "I've been sacrificing for this family since I was 16, I said quietly. "Here we go." Meg rolled her eyes. "Saint brother. Always reminding us how much he's done." "I'm not," I started, but my father cut me off. "You've always thought you were better than us," he said, the alcohol making his words slur slightly. "Looking down on us from your perfect life, with your perfect job." I looked around at their faces, hostile, expectant, unified in their perception of me as the villain of our family story. In that moment, something inside me broke. Not in a dramatic, theatrical way. It was quieter than that, like a thread that had been pulled taut for years finally snapping. "I'm done," I said, standing up from the table. "I'm done being your scapegoat. I'm done being blamed for everyone's choices but my own." "See," my mother gestured wildly. "This is exactly what I'm talking about. Always dramatic. Always making everything about you." I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I simply gathered my coat and keys and walked toward the door. "Where are you going?" Meg asked, a slight tremor in her voice that almost made me pause. "Home," I said, "and I won't be coming back." The silence that followed my departure was deafening. No calls, no texts, no attempts to understand or reconcile. It confirmed what I had suspected for years. I was valued not for who I was, but for what I could provide. And now that I had removed myself as both resource and scapegoat, I had no role left to play. The first few months were the hardest. Holidays passed unmarked. Birthdays went uncelebrated. I'd reach for my phone to share good news, only to remember there was no one waiting to hear it. I questioned my decision constantly. Was I being selfish? Had I abandoned them when they needed me most? Therapy helped. My therapist helped me see the pattern of emotional manipulation I'd been subjected to for years. She helped me understand that walking away wasn't abandonment. It was self-preservation. Families are supposed to build each other up, she told me during one session, not tear each other down to avoid facing their own issues. Slowly, I rebuilt my life on my terms. I made friends who appreciated my reliability rather than exploiting it. I excelled at work, earning a promotion that allowed me to move to a bigger apartment with a view of the city. I started dating someone who valued communication and responsibility, qualities my family had always viewed with suspicion. About a year after our final confrontation, my phone lit up with my father's name. I stared at it for a long time before answering. "Hey," he said, his voice gruff but subdued. "Your mother and I are having some trouble with the lease renewal. The landlord's raising the rent, and we're a bit short this month." No apology. No acknowledgement of our last conversation. Just another request for help, as if nothing had changed. "I can't do that anymore," I said, my voice steady. "Can't or won't?" he challenged, the familiar accusatory tone creeping back in. "Both," I replied and ended the call. Similar conversations followed with other family members over the years. Meg needed money for a car repair. Mom wanted advice about a medical bill. Each time, the request came without preamble or recognition of our fractured relationship. Each time, I set a boundary and held it. It's been 3 years now since I walked away. I won't pretend it doesn't still hurt. Some days, I scroll through old family photos and wonder what might have been different if we'd all been able to take responsibility for our own choices. But those moments are becoming less frequent, less painful. Sometimes the only way to break a cycle is to walk away from the people who keep blaming you for holding it together. It's not about revenge or punishment. It's about finally prioritizing your own well-being after years of putting everyone else first. I don't know if my family will ever understand what happened between us. I don't know if they'll ever see their part in our collective unraveling. But I do know this. I'm no longer waiting for their validation to live my life. And there's a kind of freedom in that quiet, bittersweet, but real. The story they tell about me might never change. But the story I live every day is finally my own.